So you say that it's not referring, in your opinion, to burning in hell?
No, I don't think so at all.
Even though it says in that very context, nevertheless, to avoid fornication, and the Bible tells us that fornicators burn in hell.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody take it that way. I think it just means to, and again, I don't know Greek and everything except for a handful of words, but I don't think it means to burn. I think it means to be, of course you don't want to be a fornicator, but a person could conceivably not marry, not fornicate, but still be distracted by, desires of the flesh, which are like natural and everything. And my objection to the whole celibacy thing, by the way, is, the whole First Timothy doctrines of demons thing. I think to tell someone you can't marry, that's a doctrine of demons, and I know the church has explained that by saying, well, we don't tell priests they can't marry, we just choose men from among those who have chosen not to marry. I think that's kind of a game, really. I think they have forbidden people to marry, really. And the Orthodox do the same thing, only with a twist. It's just the high ones that can't marry. The other ones have to be, which I think is wicked too, to say someone has to be married. But
so
the Orthodox say the priests have to be married.
Well, but St. Paul himself says that it's better not to marry, and you're saying that it's a doctrine of devils. Well,
to forbid to marry is a doctrine of devils.
Right.
No, of course, celibacy is not of devils. Of course, that's fine. But to say someone they can't is a doctrine of devils. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's the passage I was referring to earlier, 1 Timothy 4, and a lot of people misunderstand that. It has nothing to do with Catholic teaching on celibacy there. It's talking about, ever since the beginning of the church, there were Gnostics, and then there were Manichaeans, and then there were the other groups during the Middle Ages who had this dualist idea that there were two gods, a god of matter and a god of the spirit, and everything of matter was evil. And they would, the most extreme among them, forbid people from marrying because that was, of the flesh, of material created things. And so that's what it's talking about. That heresy has gone back since the beginning of the church. And the Cathars were another group who held that heresy, basically, which originated back in the beginning. So it's not talking about celibacy at all, but it is a contradiction, I believe, definitely, for you to say that the Bible is clearly teaching that it's better to be unmarried, but
if you can do it, if you have that gift, I mean.
Right, and the church is saying that the call to the religious state or the priestly state is a higher dedication, and so you should pattern yourself after what the Bible teaches is the better state and way to serve God. And so
considering the current distress, considering what was going on at the time, it'd be definitely not, to drag a wife into the persecution or whatever that was going on at the time. I want to know what you thought about a couple of particular verses, actually. In 1 John, where it says, you probably hear this one pretty often too, 1 John 2:19, which says, they went out from us, they were not of us. For if this is where I believe that real believers stay believers and they don't fall away completely, they might backslide, they might whatever, but they don't fall away completely. If they had been of us, they would no doubt have continued with us, but they went out that they might be made manifest that they were not all of us. That's a pretty strong one for the people who turn away, the people like the seed, the people with in the parable of the sower, and people like Judas and everything. That if they were of us, if they were really of us, they would have continued with us. But the fact that they left just proves that they never were. I think John is affirming what I'm saying there, is that real believers stay believers, and those who just kind of hang around the periphery don't.
Yeah, and I've given a lot of thought to that passage, and when I read that passage, it's very clear to me what he's saying, because we've dealt with a lot of people who might be, interested in the information, and people we've even met, who they appear to be in agreement, but you can sense from the beginning that they're not really of one mind. They don't really have that true internal conviction and outlook on things the way you do, and so if they, go off to following something else or believing something different, it doesn't surprise you because you sense really that they really didn't believe. And so I think all he's clearly expressing there is that with many people, that's the case. They really weren't of the truth. He doesn't say that that's the case with everyone. And he's just simply expressing that about certain people. And in fact, he may be referring to a few people in particular in that passage. And I can totally understand what is being said there. Whereas we clearly, as I mentioned, have all these passages, which I don't even think you've addressed, try to address them, like 2 Peter 2, etc., where it talks about people who are washed, returning to the mud, on and on and on. St. Paul himself saying that he could lose his justification, which indicate that not all who believe remain among them, but some people who just didn't have the same spirit, and therefore that you can see why they didn't stay, because they didn't have the same beliefs and internal conviction. And so that's what I believe is clearly being said there. But as far as getting back to the 1 Corinthians 7, where you try to say that maybe it's referring to burning in passion or something.
Yeah.
Not hell, but as I mentioned, it specifically indicates in context to avoid fornication, which is, according to 1 Corinthians 6:9, the very chapter right before that. In fact, a few passages above that, it indicates that fornicators will burn in hell. So that strongly indicates that
those whose that's what characterizes their lives. I think a real believer who stumbles and gets back up, and this, of course, will come in if and when we ever discuss on another day, like the priesthood and everything. If somebody stumbles and gets back, the righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up. If a righteous man falls into that sin, I don't think it's not characteristic of him. He's not comfortable with it. His inner man, which according to Paul in Romans 7, delights in the things of the law of God, would be mournful over that and would repent and everything. I don't think that's the same thing as those who live, who, as Peter says, plunge into a flood of dissipation, and they think it's strange that you don't do that. So I think it is different. I think there's a definite difference between, even when a believer sins, it's not the same way that it is when an unrighteous person sins.
So you believe that a believer could, for instance, commit fornication sometimes?
Yeah.
But see, this is the problem.
But yes, I do, yes.
Okay.
I mean, of course they shouldn't, obviously. And if they had no problem with that, obviously, then they're not a believer. But, I mean, if they through weakness and temptation, if they did that, they would...
Where's the line, though? I don't agree with that, obviously. But where's the line that, he does it once a month, or a person does it, once a month, but where does it become, that's what defines him, that he is now a fornicator? There is no distinction. You can't draw a line.
I think it's in the heart. I think it's in the attitude. Like Jesus said, Peter said, how many times shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? 70 times 7. I think God is that patient. And, of course, the evil thing comes in when people think, well, I can just push God all I want because he's just going to keep on forgiving me and forgiving me. That attitude could not reside in the bosom of a real believer, I don't think. But I'm sorry.
That's the fundamental problem there, because your whole theology is based upon, quote, eternal security. Well, obviously someone who's committing fornication, and you say that person can still believe he's eternally secure, that person could have no eternal security. Obviously he doesn't. But even from your standpoint, which is false, but let's say we were to adopt that for the sake of argument,
right,
that this person is committing fornication, he's not sure, maybe if I'm doing it, this much, then I am defined by that fornication, and therefore I am among the fornicators. Maybe I'm not then eternally secure. Therefore, there could be no comfort, there could be no assurance of salvation. Because you'd never know, how many sins equates to being defined as a mortal sinner, or one of these things that, is part of the category of those who are not saved.
Well, that's why a person should fear and should purify themselves and flee fornication, flee temptation, and all these things. What it says in Colossians 3,